My name is Kithchin Dahl, and I am a volunteer at the Michigan Flight Museum in Belleville, Michigan. I'm a retired advanced placement U.S. history teacher, and this is the perfect job for a retired teacher because I get to do what I do best, which is teach American history. And then I go home tonight and I don't grade any of your papers. And you get to sit in my history classroom today, and you don't have to go home and worry about studying for my test in the morning. So that means all we can do today is sit back, relax, and enjoy a good story. And American history is a story. It's got its good and it's got its bad chapters. It's just like any book. And in order to understand the whole story, you have to read every chapter. You have to listen to every voice to get the full narrative of our story. We cannot pick and choose. We cannot just read the chapters that make us feel good and energized and skip those that give us a stomachache. So when we talk about World War II, we are going to look at the bad and the good. When you talk about the bad things of World War II, those chapters we don't want to reread, obviously we have the Hitler years. We also have worldwide suffering. America sent that boatloads of people seeking asylum during that war. We didn't say, come, stay safe. We sent them back. America has Japanese relocation camps. We never acknowledge, we never thank the Tuskegee Airmen, who are the black escorts to our white pilots. And we also are woefully unprepared for what our soldiers would face in the South Pacific Coral Islands. That Pacific theater of war was like another planet, and we didn't really understand it. But on the good side of World War II, we are going to have geniuses and energy. We are going to have bravery. And bravery is not just those soldiers who stormed the beaches of Normandy. It was any soldier in any campaign and their family at home who was worried sick about their safety. We are going to have teamwork like we never have had in this country. We are going to have loyalty. Think of the 442nd Unit, which is still the most highly decorated unit in our military. And it was composed of Japanese American troops while their parents were in the relocation camps. Think of the code talkers, the Navajo code talkers, who were showing their loyalty to this country by helping us with their culture and their language. They made it possible for our Marines to take Iwo Jima. We are going to, during this time period, change labor laws. We are going to change racial laws. We are going to have the best child care we have ever had in this country. And obviously, we're going to have an ultimate victory. But that victory comes at the cost of an atomic bomb. And that is one of those bad chapters. To understand World War II, we have to go back to the Great War of 1914. When America was in that war for a very, very short time, we were horrified by the carnage of that conflict. And America learned two different lessons. The first lesson was that if there would ever be another world conflict, the weapon of choice would be the airplane, because no government was ever again going to put their troops in trenches. The second lesson we learned was that if there would ever be another world conflict, America would not be involved. We said we will never again go over there. We didn't define where over there was. We didn't care where over there was. We were not putting our nose in somebody else's business. And so when that conflict ended, we very arrogantly refused to sign the Treaty of Versailles. We had a special peace treaty between the United States and Germany. And when that document was signed, we brought our soldiers home. And we celebrated the fact that that conflict was over. We were alive. We came home to a very isolationist nation. Congress had passed almost unbreakable neutrality laws. They had passed incredibly strict immigration laws. We convinced ourselves we'd be forever safe because we had an ocean on each side of us. No nation would ever sneak up on us. And we just said, we're done. This is it. Never again are we being involved. And so what we did at that point was just dance right into the Roaring '20s. And while we danced in the Roaring '20s, we entertained ourselves with barnstorming, having people show us the fun of airplanes, the future of airplanes. Look at these things. They do flips and lips and this and that. And clearly, we're all going to be oriented to an airplane at that point. We will continue to have that going until 1926, when Billy Mitchell and a general in the Army accused the military brass of almost treasonable administration of our national defense budget, because he said they are putting their time and their money into the creation and the building of battleships instead of aircraft carriers. And we all know what an aircraft carrier is. It is a floating runway for the airplane of the future. They did not like what he said, how he said it, how often, how loudly. They court-martialed him for insubordination. Basically, he was court-martialed because he embarrassed our military. He was put on trial. He was found guilty. He was stripped of all those medals. He lost his pensions, his pay. They told him to disappear for 5 years. He resigned from the Army. But the one thing that Billy Mitchell didn't lose was a reputation, and people listened to him. They knew he knew what he was talking about. And today, Billy Mitchell is considered the father of the modern American Air Force. If you've ever flown out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you have flown out of Billy Mitchell Airport. If you have ever flown in a B-25 Mitchell, it is named for Billy Mitchell. So he did what he wanted to do. He raised the stakes. He made people start to debate and all of that. And that was it, 1926. And we continued, once he was kind of out of the picture, America continued to dance in those 20s. And we stopped dancing. Every single party stopped in 1929 with the crash of the stock market. And America just slogged into the 1930s in that depressing time period. And while we did that, we put blinders on ourselves. Every family was not worried about anything in the world but daily survival for themselves. The world did it and we did it. Just mind our own business. Suddenly, 1937, Japan invades China, and that starts World War II. That means that the Great War of 1914 to 1918 has a new name. It's got a number. It used to be the war to end all wars, the Great War. Now it's called World War I because this is World War II. But this is happening in the Asian world, and America still has its blinders on, and America could care less, really care less. It was too far away. It was too far over there. Most of us had never traveled in the Far East. We couldn't pronounce the names of the cities where the action was taking place. So we just ignored it. 1938, the very next year, the American military and the American government decided they should maybe start to plan for the future. And so they had a special contest between the airplane companies. Who could make the biggest, fastest, scariest, biggest, baddest airplane for our military arsenal? It was won by Consolidated Air in San Diego, California. They designed and produced the B24 Bomber. It was a monster. It was the monster of our whole arsenal. The wingspan is 110 feet. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 1/3 of a football field. It carried a crew of 10. It had 4 giant propellers. It has guns in the nose, the head, the waist gunners out that window, waist gunners out that one, rear gunners, or the tail gunners, and a bomb bay that opens up. It carried 8,000 pounds of bombs. This thing went 300 miles an hour. It went 3,000 miles before needing to be refueled. It was just incredible. It was incredible. It was obviously the future of the military. They were making them one at a time in San Diego. One at a time. It was taking a whole month to make each one. 1 month to make a plane, sell it to the Army, ferry it to a base. Start all the way over at step 1. Another 1 month, 1 plane, sell it, and ferry it, which is no problem. This is 1938. We have all the time in the world to do this. Until 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland, and suddenly time is a little bit less manageable. We don't pay attention too much when he invades Poland. That's Eastern Europe. And again, most of us have never been to Eastern Europe, and it doesn't feel that this is going to impact us. but it is going to affect us. Poland is going to fight by itself for 1 whole year. And when Poland fell, Hitler just turned his guns and he just walked right into Norway, Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, France. And when Americans saw the swastika flying from the top of the Eiffel Tower, Americans paid attention because America loved Paris. We still are not getting involved, but we're paying attention. We know what's happening because we have newspapers, we have radios, we have people going to the movie theaters on the weekends to look at the newsreels. We have magazines. We know what's going on. But again, it's not keeping us awake too much at night until the next year, 1940, and we hear Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England, going on the radio and speaking to us every night in English. We are the last man standing. We need your help. America cannot stay out anymore. We are going to fight to the last man. We will fight forever, but we're an island. We are little. We need your help. It is going to be impossible for England to survive if all they do is have the Royal Air Force keep the sky above London safe. They are going to need to take the war to the German infrastructure. The only thing that's got the speed and the size and the capabilities to do that is the B24 Bomber, and it's taking too long to make it. He says, help us figure out a way to do it. Franklin Roosevelt is president of the United States during this time. He loves Winston Churchill. They're practically best friends. Roosevelt wants to help him, but it's impossible with the laws passed by Congress. He has to get creative and go around the back door of Congress. What is he going to do? The Battle of Britain ended at Halloween of 1940. That's the end of October. Christmas of 1940. Roosevelt will go on the radio and give his famous Arsenal of Democracy speech. And in that speech, he promises every American woman, I will not send your son, your husband, your brother to a foreign war. This is their war. They have to fight it. But we have to become the arsenal of democracy. We have to make the weapons of war so that they can use the weapons of war to fight their own battles. I will not send American troops to this war, but we have to get involved. And so in order to do that, they have to become somewhat creative. First of all, America has been creative behind the scenes. We've been dealing with destroyers for bases. We've been dealing with cash and carry. We've been dealing with lend-lease. We're trying to do anything we can, but now we have to be more open. How can we help England survive? Because we love London more than we loved Paris. And it is something that we have to deal with. So what he's going to do is become creative the way he did during the New Deal. When he had the New Deal problems, he set up think tanks. Now, think tanks are rooms full of incredibly smart, wild, crazy, radical, insane thinkers. And each group is given one problem to solve because nobody can solve it all. And so one of those think tanks was led by William Knudsen, president of General Motors of Detroit. The question his group was given was, how do we increase the production rate of the B-24 bomber? There is nothing wrong with it. This bomber is the answer to Churchill's problems, but it's taking too long to make it. What can we do to make it faster? Knudsen said, that is so easy. There are two parts to this answer. The first one, use the assembly line expertise of the automobile industry. And two, move everything to Detroit, because that's where all the cars are being made. That's where all the assembly lines are. That's where all the people are who know what to do, how to do it. And we can convert all of our car lines to make airplanes. People said, what? It's never been done. Never. Well, of course it had never been done because we never needed to have it be done. But Knudsen knew it could be done, and they had to start to figure out, what are we going to do? Roosevelt loved the idea, but how are we going to get everybody's attention to do this? Well, in order to get the attention of people, we needed three things. We needed somebody's name, We needed somebody's land, and we needed somebody's money. And we got it all from Henry Ford. He was the biggest isolationist in this nation. He didn't want to get involved in anything. But his son, Edsel, who was very much into airplanes and very involved with what the future looked like, told his father that if Ford didn't do it first and didn't jump first, somebody else would. Somebody else would make money on this war. And Ford is, on top of everything else, a businessman. He agreed to do it. So when we think about Henry Ford, everybody in the world knew the name Henry Ford. It makes you listen, because if you think about it, in 1908, when Ford started his Model T, the headlines on every newspaper in the globe said, "Move to Detroit, Ford pays $5 a day." And everybody came to Detroit. Everybody knew Henry Ford. They knew he had good money. They knew he had good jobs. They knew they could come and get employment. So Henry Ford's got the name. Henry Ford owned a whole bunch of land in Washtenaw County. He called it Camp Willow Run. He was running it as a camp for the sons of World War I soldiers. And so he's got all this land that he can sell to the Army, bulldoze down, and start to build a brand new factory, because we know that we will not be able to just use the factories in downtown Detroit. We're going to need some big bomber plants. So he's got the land. And we know he's got the money. So Ford has got the name, he's got the land, he's got the money, and they all agree this is what we have to do. So that means if we know that Roosevelt gave his Arsenal of Democracy speech December 29th of 1940, just 2 more days, we are into January of 1941. And it's important to keep these dates in mind, because 1941 is the big year. January and February of 41, Ford will send teams of experts to California to take apart the B-24 piece by piece by piece, to measure, to complete, to picture, to draw, to do whatever they have to do, so that there's experts who are going to be able to come back to Detroit and design the machines that are going to make the machines for millions of pieces that are going to go into making an airplane on an assembly line. That is going to be the planning for the first 2 months. They're going to be planning a bomber plant. They're going to be bringing Doolittle, Jimmy Doolittle, out of reserve service and put him on active duty in Detroit. And as he said, his job was to perform a shotgun marriage between the airlines and the Army. And you know what a shotgun marriage is. You grab them by the neck, you look them in the eyeballs, and you say, "Do it now." And that's what they're going to do. For 2 months, there's going to be wild planning how to do all of this so that we can get rolling. So this is the famous Willow Run B-24 bomber plant in Ypsilanti, Michigan. It is going to become the biggest factory in the world under one roof. It is going to go up very quickly because it's a government priority. Because at this point, remember, Churchill has 2 enemies. One is Hitler and one is time. We will have 5 companies putting this together at once, and they are just going to be given very little direction. Just get this thing made, because we don't have time to muck around. You are going to find that we have big straight lines. We're going to have giant windows for ventilation, giant windows for natural lighting. We are going to be located 25 miles west of downtown Detroit. And so it is going to be very easy to do a partnership with the downtown car manufacturers and Willow Run. We will be a manufacturing plant. All of these parts, all of these things are manufacturing plants where we're going to have machine shops and all kinds of side rooms where things are being put together, because not everything can be put on a moving assembly line. We are going to have one little road right here, which will soon become the Detroit Industrial Highway, or the Willow Run Expressway. When the war is over, this becomes the first leg of I-94, because it's the first highway in the country with triple overpasses because of the constant 24-hour-a-day traffic from downtown Detroit, 25 miles away, to Willow Run. on great big trucks, specially designed by Ford, to bring parts from the planes that are being made in downtown Detroit to Willow Run, back and forth. It becomes, as I said, the first road in the country to have triple overpasses. Willow Run will be a manufacturing plant, but Willow Run is also, most importantly, complete assembly. We will put all of these pieces together into a jigsaw, basically, and make the B24 Bomber. Now, this is the road I mentioned. These are all the workshops. These are the 2 assembly lines. Each assembly line is 1/4 of a mile wide, a 1/2 mile long, because it's got to be able to take these monster wings of 110 feet. Ford always talks about having an assembly line for 1 mile. He does, but he forgets to tell you it's in 2 parts. But anyway, he's got 2 assembly lines, and these planes are going to start being put together. And then when it became very apparent that we needed a longer runway, we needed to have a little bit more of this assembly line because of changes that were being made. We realized we couldn't, because if we went too much farther, we were into the top, which looks like an airport. That is an airport. That's Wayne County. You can see a division between Washtenaw County and Wayne County. And while we were building the bomber plant, Wayne County was building the airport. And we could not extend the runway into their infrastructure. So they came up again with one of the most creative things I think they ever did. And that was at the end of the line, they put giant railroad turntables. And so the airplanes are going to be coming down the line. And if we pretend that you are all sitting in Wayne County on the runway of the airport, and I am on the assembly line in Washtenaw, and I'm coming down as an airplane, and I'm getting bigger, 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 bigger. My wheels are going to be locked into these big turntables. I'm going to be turned. I am going to continue down a little more. And at this point, they're going to stabilize and weigh me. And until 1943, they were painting me until we realized, why are we painting? It takes too much time. It takes too much money. It takes too much extra weight. Put in more palms. So they then also said, if you've ever stood under a B-24 that goes over, the world shakes. We do not need to camouflage an airplane. So they stopped painting me. Then all of a sudden, a firewall will be dropped behind me. They're going to gas me up, and I'm going out these big garage doors right here on the south end of the plant. And so it is really quite a thing. Think of it. We're going to have these planes coming to get all these parts are being made already from downtown Detroit or here, getting on the line, turn, and they come out to that end right there. And that is the south end. And once they do those, you're going to see all of this long, big building. That's Hangar 1. That's where we had all kinds of test pilots and test teams sleeping on cots so that they were always ready for testing of these planes when they came out. Because, again, we had no time to go to Ann Arbor or Plymouth or Saline or any place to look for pilots. We wanted them on site to be able to test these planes, and then they would go. They will do hours on the ground to make sure that everything works there. They will do hours in the sky to make sure everything works. They will be dropping fake bombs in Lake Huron. Lake Huron's loaded with fake bombs. They are going to do that, and then they will fly these airplanes to Romulus Airport. Romulus Airport today is Detroit Airport, and at that point, they will be ferried around the country to whatever base has ordered them. We will send the first 7 B-24s to England to let them have those things to get started. And then we are going to get going. And so anyway, this is the famous Willow Run bomber plant. No OSHA. Get it up as fast as you can, slack it together, and let it go. So it was wonderful. Here's a side picture of one of these rooms where things are either being put together or they're even being put together with a few pieces that came from Detroit. But you can see the size. You can see the fact that all of this is not on an assembly line that moves. Here's the assembly line. Look at this. And again, think, these are 110 feet This is a third of a football field coming down this. It's got all kinds of exciting things in it. First of all the way down the middle, there is a ditch. And in that ditch, there's a chain. And under each airplane, there's a little hook helping them come down, because these are being moved by men. And men and women. But if you've gone to the Rouge today, you know that cars and trucks are being moved by robots and people. And so we didn't have that then. So you've got them all in a great big line. The west end of the line is higher than the east end, because gravity is going to help push these things down, which is fabulous, I think. The flooring are made of wooden bricks, and that's because wood is softer, quieter, more absorbent. Everything is better for your workers. And if there's an accident or a big spill, we don't have time to look for a jackhammer, find a cement truck, pour cement, keep people from putting their initials in it. We don't have time. So what they did was pop out those ruined bricks, replace them with wooden bricks. We had mountains of leftover wooden bricks. So the floor was always ready to go. We've got these things moving. We got all in the middle. There would be workshops and classrooms and offices and nurses' offices, clinics, stuff like that, all across the top. Giant experimental cranes. No one knew if these things would work. People who worked the cranes were in cages because they were moving such big things. Can you imagine having a crane going across where you are moving, dipping, flipping, turning, doing all this stuff with wings, and then whoop, boom, there go the wings. All of it was experimental. We didn't know if it would work. Along the side, you've got garage doors where these giant trucks came in from Detroit. And these giant trucks that were specially made by Ford are probably as surprising to anybody that saw them go by as we are today. If you pass a flat truck that is carrying or taking a windmill thingy, up the blade of one of these big windmills, they were huge. And again, we had to be ready for it. So here we go. Let me read this wonderful quote written by Randy Houghton. He's one of our pilots out here. He wrote a book called Images of Aviation, Willow Run. And he says, the auto industry would become the backbone of the four-engine bomber production. These airplanes would have names on them like Consolidated and Boeing, but inside every bomber, you would find parts with them on like Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, Briggs, Nash, Hudson, Bunn, Studebaker, Buick, Delco, Remy. These things were Detroit made, and everybody was part of the team. And I think that is one of the most important things about this. The CEOs and the presidents of all of these car manufacturers had egos probably about as big as Henry Ford's. But do you know what they did? They swallowed their egos to be part of the Ford Willow Run B24 team. Ford paid for it. This was Ford's plan, and they were part of the team. We didn't have time to worry about who got credit. And so they just did it. They got it together. And all of you people out here, especially if you lived in the Detroit area, you had relatives working in those factories. You had people who were working for the war effort to make all this stuff. Here is the famous turn. So here they are. They're coming down the line and then turn this way, and then they're going to fly out right there. You had to pass that other line. And it really was unbelievably exciting. And it worked, which is really something. Okay, here's the entire complex. This picture was taken in June 2nd, 1941, which means, we are getting these things up. Think about the fact that groundbreaking was, this is 42. Groundbreaking was March of 41. This picture was June 2nd of 1942. That's only 15 months. Think about it, 15 months to get this plant done, which is incredible. Today, I'm not sure we could all get our bathrooms renovated in 15 months. But there was a government priority, and again, no OSHA, just get it done. That's what we are. We don't have time to muck around with details. So you've got that one single little road. Look how big it has gotten. You've got the plant right here, the two assembly lines, the turn, Out we come. The planes will line up right here in front of Hangar 1, waiting for those test pilots. They are then going to be tested around. That's Willow Run Airport, which was completed a month before the whole plant was done, and then sent around. The only part of the plant that's still around is right here, the very end of the line where the garage doors are, those planes would fly out. Everything else has been bulldozed and it's gone, but we do have the end of the runway, the end of the line, which I think we need to save for historical purposes. But there we are. So that is June of 42. But if we back up just 6 months, that is December of 41, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And we have to remember that at the attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii gets all the attention because it's closest to us and it's romantic. But when we talk about December 7, we have to remember it was an attack on the American territories. And we don't talk about that enough. It is not just Hawaii. It is also Guam, and it is Midway, and it's Wake Island, and it's the Philippines. These were American territories that were attacked. Those other territories, they were not only attacked, they were invaded and they were occupied. But anyway, we are going to see a change in the world right here. December 7th, 1941 is the attack by Japan on the American territories. December 8th, Roosevelt is going to have to go back on the radio and take back everything he said about the arsenal of democracy, because he is going to declare war against Japan. And he's going to say to every American mother, I am sending your husband, your son, and your brother to this war. It's no longer foreign. This is our war. We have been attacked and we are in it. Then 3 days later, Germany and Italy attack us for declare war on the United States because they have a treaty with Japan. And so by December 11th, 1941, America, who said we will never again go over there, we will never again get involved, will be fighting a two-front war. We will be fighting Japan in the South Pacific. We will be fighting Germany in the European theater, and everybody has to buck up and move it faster. And that's what exactly is going to happen. Roosevelt's going to expect us. We are no longer now having to do things behind the scenes. We no longer have to do it in secret. We are openly going to fight this war. We agree that we're going to continue to help our friends. Our friends would be the Soviet Union, who had been attacked by Germany. Our friends are going to be China, that was attacked by Japan. We're going to help the French resistance. And of course, we're going to help Churchill and England. But all of those friends are going to get our help. But we're going to try to make things for ourselves too, because now it's our war. We're in it. We have to supply our own troops. So that's December 1941. We will very quickly build bomber plants all over this country, not just Willow Run. They all go up about as fast as Willow Run did, but they're all going to be smaller, and none of them are going to be as famous or as efficient as Willow Run, because we have the advantage of being 25 miles away from downtown Detroit, where everything's being made. But look at the map, and these things will go up fast. Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Chicago, Detroit, right here. That's Willow Run. That's us. Western New York, Western Pennsylvania, Omaha, Nebraska, St. Louis, Kansas City, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Fort Worth, Texas. We're going to have major bomber plants made running down the middle of this country where they are safest. We're going to have San Diego continue to make the B24 that have consolidated. We're going to have up in Washington State, Oregon, Boeing is going to make B-17s. We're going to have Kaiser shipyards up there making the great big ships. We're going to have the American Navy taking over the East Coast for their submarine yards, because we're using submarines in the Atlantic. We do not use submarines in the West Coast, in the Pacific. And so this whole thing, we are building fast and furiously, because now it is definitely our war. But every place we fly, when we go places, we will see boxes of parts and different things that say Willow Run. You can see right here, when empty, the turn to Willow Run, because we were such a supply line from downtown Detroit to everything else. We would put parts on these giant trucks and ship them to all these plants. We use trucks, not trains. Trains run on a schedule. Trains run on a track. Trucks can run 24 hours a day and back up to that factory, unload, and go back and get things again. It was unbelievable how we did that. We also sent knockdown airplanes to all these factories where we would put all the pieces and all the wings and everything on a truck, send it and say, you put it together. You can figure this out. We can't do it all. But anyway, we were going to be very involved with all the bomber plants. And then overnight, this economy, our American economy, went from being a consumer economy to a wartime economy. Everybody in the country will become part of this team. They will grumble a little, but you know what? It doesn't matter. You don't have choices. You have to become a part of the team to help us make the weapons that we need to do. And so as an example, Steinway Piano, that had been making the great big baby grand pianos. They are the ultimate in consumer excess. If you want a piano, just buy an upright. But these great big baby grands took 400 pounds of wood, yards of brass, yards of copper, ivory, manpower, dollars. They were so expensive. And the government said to Steinway, if people can afford to buy a Steinway baby grand, they should buy war bonds. Because war bonds, it's expensive to run a war. And so they told Steinway, you are out of the piano business. You're not making pianos anymore. You're done. And they said, what? And the government said to Steinway, you are our coffin maker. Steinway said, oh, we're a piano maker. We don't make coffins. And the government said, you do now because you're using too much wood and we need the coffins. And so unless you think of something else, you are making coffins for the rest of this war. Well, you can bet Steinway found something else. In about 4 months, they came up with the Victory Vertical, which was a keyboard on card table legs that could flip up and down. You put it into a wooden locker. You put a tuning fork on top. You put some piano music in there. You locked the locker. You put it on an airplane, and it was parachuted or it was landed on military bases all over the globe so that when Bing Crosby comes to sing to entertain the troops, he's got a piano nearby. And if you remember the opening scenes of White Christmas, Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye are singing and dancing on a makeshift stage in the middle of a battlefield. And the guy behind Bing Crosby is playing the Victory Vertical. And so therefore, Steinway got back into the piano business at that point, as long as they made them just for the military and they painted them in camouflage colors. We are also going to see every clockmaker in this country will stop making clocks and they will do bomb fuses. Slide rule companies are going to start making the Norden bomb sights. Pratt Whitney, who made these giant engines, they're still headquartered in Connecticut. But they will start to they will have their engines made in Detroit because Ford will add a whole addition to the River Rouge plant. No windows so that it can be running 24 hours a day. And Ford will make the Pratt Whitney engines so that they can then start their trip around the country from Detroit on these big trucks. And now you have to start the trip in Connecticut. They're going to do that. Kahn Instruments, if any of you in here played the tuba or the French horn or the cornet, the trumpet, Kahn Instruments in Elkhart, Indiana, stopped making brass instruments and they made brass bullets. McCord Radiator, a little tiny radiator company in downtown Detroit, which used to just boop, 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 punch out the frame of radiators for cars. Stop, because we're not making any cars in Detroit from 42 on. And they will just boop, 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 punch out helmets for our troops. This little tiny company makes 91% of the helmets in this country. Berkey and Gay, one of the best wood workers in downtown Detroit, or in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They made antique reproductions of beautiful furniture. They will send their entire inventory of wooden furniture to Marshall Fields in downtown Chicago, and they will make wooden gliders. And you know what a glider is. A glider is an airplane that has no engine. and it's pulled by a noisy airplane. And then all of a sudden, they let you go. And I am going to crash land quietly behind enemy lines. And what is on this glider? 13 men, scouts, meth makers, food for the resistance, guns for the resistance, medical supplies for the American troops that are going to show up in a half a month or sometime. You're going to have that thing. It carries one Jeep. It can carry a field radio set and repair. It carries a field kitchen, and it is going to be our way to get into behind those lines. It's going to never take off because these things have no engines. So therefore, we've got a pile of wood, and they might need to use all that lumber to build something, shelters, or who knows what. But Berhe and Gay stopped making furniture. You know who else makes gliders? Heinz in Pittsburgh. They go from pickles to gliders. They closed their line, half of their lines, because they still make pickles, but they also make gliders. Kingsford, the factory in Iron Mountain, Michigan, almost lost all their jobs when Ford stopped making station wagons. They were making the Woody station wagons. The whole Cotton City basically became unemployed. And then all of a sudden, they said, whoop, guess what? You aren't going to make Woody station wagons anymore. You're going to make gliders. So the whole city went back to work making gliders. Iron Mountain, Michigan, practically owned by Ford, made over 4,000 gliders. And so this kind of stuff is happening everywhere. Muskegon, Brunswick, bowling balls. They stopped making bowling balls and made little bowling balls, which are billiard balls, to send them around to our troops. You're going to have Tootsie Roll gets the first government contract for candy. Because first of all, there's no one in the country, in the world, who doesn't love a Tootsie Roll. And in the 40s, anything that was shipped was always wrapped in wax paper. We didn't have air bubbles. We didn't have fake popcorn. We didn't have all that stuff. Tootsie Rolls are still wrapped in wax paper. So they got the first contract. Hershey's got into trouble because Hershey wanted to continue making the Kisses. And the government said, have you lost your mind? Every kid in this country is collecting tin cans. They're looking for old pots and pans and for forks and knives to turn in. They're literally turning in their old bicycles. They're picking up pieces of foil on the streets and making a ball of foil, turning it into their scoutmaster for a badge. You cannot wrap candy in tin foil. You cannot use your sugar ration. People all over this country are rationing sugar. You can't hog the sugar in this country. So until the war is over, no more Kisses. Hershey said, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the government said, we don't care. Figure it out. And that's when it took a couple months for Hershey to come up with the 4-ounce brick. And when I say it's a brick, it was a brick. The recipe said it cannot taste better than a boiled potato. And it was so hard that if you wanted a sliver of it, you used your fingernail, or you used a penknife, or you used that tooth, and you took a little sliver of it. And people said, it tastes terrible. We don't want this. Why would we have this? Hershey said, and the government said, this is not a snack. This is going to keep you alive until somebody finds you. And so that brick went into every soldier, every pilot, every airman, every sailor's pouches or pockets or, rafts, because it becomes part of the sea rations, combat ration. They said after the war, we'll get sugar again in this, but until then, Hershey's making something to keep you alive. And everyone said, okay, we're going to have the American Lady Corset Company tell women in this country, forget it, you're not buying a new bra until the war is over. We're making parachutes from now on. You're going to have high school kids, instead of raising money for prom, they are raising money for war bonds. South High School in Grand Rapids made so much money with themselves, their families, and the greater Grand Rapids community that they bought a B-17 bomber. And they named it the Pride of South High. They bought 33 landing crafts. Those are those funny little ship things that come from the ship. They run on the water and then go right up the beach like we used in Normandy. They bought 33 of them. And so you're going to have the older kids part of this team. The little kids are part of the team, picking up stuff. You're going to have Weekly Reader. How many in here remember Weekly Reader? I think we all do. Well, Weekly Reader wanted to let the little kids, the first graders and kindergartners, be part of the team. And they gave them a stamp book. And each one of these stamps is worth 10 cents. And they said, Weekly Reader said, you've got a piggy bank in your bedroom. Crack it open. Break it down. You've been collecting dimes and nickels and quarters for holidays and birthdays. Do something with the money. And so they told you what you could do. Here, one 10-cent stamp paid for 3 cartridges. One 25-cent stamp, and you fed a pigeon for a week, a carrier pigeon for a week. 20 25-cent stamps, and you bought a helmet for some soldier. And so you've got this whole country doing things. The parents are involved. They're working at the factories. You've got the older kids involved. You've got the factories converting. You've got the little kids. They even tell the little kids, go on outside and start picking milkweed. Milkweed! And it's growing in your backyard. It's growing on the farm lanes. It's growing all over. Go out and pick the little white fairies. 20 pounds of little white fairies. And can you imagine how big the bag has to be to make 20 pounds of those things? But those fairies are waterproof. They are 40% more buoyant than cork. And 20 pounds will stuff one life vest for a sailor or a pilot. And they told these kids, get out there and start collecting milkweed. So we're going to have that happening every place you want to go. Hayes Body in Grand Rapids will make parachutes. And what I think is interesting about that, they were one of the best parachute makers, testers in the country. They will have the high school athletes going around the field with wheelbarrows so that they will collect the parachute and the dummy body that is being sent down, 165 pounds. They are going to collect these things in wheelbarrows and bring them back to the starting point so they can test them again. So that they're using that not only as to help the military, but they're using that as their weight training for their high school sports. Unbelievable. This country, we were a team. We all did it. It only took 5 months. It took until May of 42 for the federal government to realize that we have a worker shortage in this country. There were so many men in the service. Somebody's going to have to come into the factories to make all these trucks and tanks and airplanes and parachutes and things. And they will spend more money on a public relations campaign than we've ever spent for anything in this country. They're basically going to tell the American woman in 1942, it is time to stop crying and writing letters. You have to go into the factories. You have to go into the factories. And in 1942, most American women weren't working out of the home. They said, I have got a traditional job. I'm a secretary or a nurse or a teacher. If I'm working out of the home, I am not a crane driver. I am not an electrician. I don't know what a riveting gun is. I can't do this. And that's when the government said, oh, yes, you can. You have to. If you want to get on with the rest of your life, if you want to bring home your father, your husband, your brother, your boyfriend, get in the factory and start making these things. You can do it. We will teach you on the spot to make it, or we will send you to a class for a week, or we will send you to the Ford School for a month. But you will learn. We know you can do it, women. You have to do it. And they will address the women's comfort level. They are going to say, if you can use a sewing machine, you can use a riveting gun. If you've ever ironed your clothing, that's a drill press. If you've ever followed a recipe, you can load shell. If you've ever folded laundry, you can fold pair of shoes. If you've ever made cookies in your kitchen, that's an assembly line. It's got 10 stations. Station 1 is sugar, 2 is flour, 3 eggs, 4 chips, 5, 6 make a ball, 7 on the tray, 8 into the oven, 9 out of the oven, 10 packing for lunch. That's an assembly line. And if I do it alone in my kitchen, I will make 24 cookies. But if I invite each person in my book club to stand at one spot and the government gives me 50 ovens, we're going to make cookies, 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 cookies. And guess what? We don't want you to make cookies. We want you to make tanks, boots, rifles, guns, airplanes. Women, you can do it. You have to, and you will. And so there it is. They are going to go through all that. I am lucky enough to be part of the Veterans History Project, which means I go and interview these old, wonderful, original Rosies. I'm a fake. I am not 100 years old. I'm a tribute Rosie. But the original Rosies are today 98 to 104 years old. I went to Kentucky to get Georgia's story because she worked at Willow Run. And she is typical of all of these women that went into the factories. 6 million women went into the factories on that government call. 6 million had the courage to do it. It was the sisters, the friends, the wives, the girlfriends, the aunts, the grandmothers, all ages went into the factories. The older, the people who were more settled, like the wives and the mothers and the grandmothers and the aunts, they worked in factories where they could take a carpool or where they could take the streetcar or they could walk to work or do something. They stayed in town. But the ones who were the young ones, the 17 and 8-year-olds like Georgia, they had the guts to take one suitcase and go to one of those bomber plants. And they said, we can do it. But a 17-year-old can do anything. They had the courage, the guts. They felt like slugs. Their brothers were in the service, and they were sitting in English class. They dropped out of high school. They dropped out of college. They left the farm. They left their little towns. They wanted roommates. They wanted adventure. They wanted to make money. They wanted to get away from mom. They wanted a whole new life. And they wanted to do something to help bring that brother or boyfriend home. And so like Georgia, they had the courage to get on with one suitcase, not necessarily knowing what they were going to do or what anything was going to be like at the end. Think of the courage they had to change their life. Think of the courage of their families to let them go. These families had already let their sons go to the military. And now they're letting their girls go who knows where. I would no more let my 17-year-old daughter drop out of high school and say, Mom, I'm moving to Omaha. Omaha? Where's Omaha? Who do you know in Omaha? What are you going to do? And she's going to say to me, I've been promised a good paying government job. I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to help bring Jimmy home. I'm going. And they did. And it was unbelievable. Georgia ended up coming from Kentucky to Willow Run. When she got here, she was roommated with two other girls who she never knew. They were all from Kentucky. And interestingly enough, within 2 months, they were not only best friends, they were sisters-in-law, because in World War II, everybody fell in love in a week, and they all married each other's brothers. So can you imagine? You got Georgia, Eloise, and Myrtle. And within 2 months, Georgia and Myrtle are family because it happened so fast. They were friends for the rest of their life. And when they loved working at Willow Run. It was so exciting. They said it was wonderful. And they knew what was coming off the line. It was an airplane. When we stopped making so many, Willow Run had to start pig slipping people in 44. They were making so many airplanes. And these 3 were sent back to Kentucky. And they went back to their farm in their little city. And one of the 3, when I interviewed her for the Veterans History Project, Eloise said, you know what? I only lasted 1 week on the farm. And I looked at my mother and I said, Ma, I can't do this no more. I've been to the big city. I've been to Ipsy. So she contacted the other 2 and said, are you guys dying? And they all said yes. They said, let's get another job. So these 3 women, Myrtle, Georgia, and Eloise, got on a bus with a black banner. They had no idea where they were going, what they were going to do, where they get off. That bus took them to Oak Ridge, Tennessee, where the bomb was being made. And those 3 went from being riveters on the line at Willow Run to being Calutron girls, standing behind a big black tube that had a window this big. And all they did was turn the dials all day long to see if it was yellow, orange, blue. What color was the flame? They had no idea what they were doing. This was a secret city. It wasn't on the maps. Nobody knew it was going. If you worked at Oak Ridge, you went into a black hole. You couldn't write letters. You couldn't get letters. It wasn't on a map. Nobody in the country knew about the Manhattan Project. They didn't know what they were doing. They were not told. They said, don't talk to anybody. Some of the women that we've interviewed who worked at Oak Ridge said, I've been married to Bob for 65 years, and I've still never told him what I did because I promised the government I wouldn't talk. Can you imagine? This was a different world. They didn't know they were working on the bomb until after it was dropped. And the headline said, thank you, Oak Ridge, for building the bomb. I was building a bomb? Yes. And so this is why we interview these women, because these Rosies are primary documentation of American history. They know what it was like. They know how they got there, what they did, who gave them the job, what flyers did they see, what everything. We know this stuff, and they have luckily told us their stories. And this is part for the Smithsonian, for the Library of Congress, for researchers all over, for all the museums. We have archives of these wonderful women and their stories. Now, Rosie the Riveter, this is the poster. We seem to think all Rosies look like this. But I have to remind you, nobody saw this poster until the 1980s, unless you worked for Westinghouse. In the 1940s, this was a Westinghouse in-house campaign. It was slapped up on the wall for 2 weeks. And Westinghouse was saying, we can do whatever the government wants us to make. Anything we need to convert our line, we can do it. And then after 2 weeks, that was taken down, rolled up, given to the new museum in town for a World War II exhibit that would be put together someday. That new museum was the National Archives. It stayed rolled up until the 1980s when the feminist movement needed a strong woman to be their icon. And they said, who is stronger, who is more energetic, who is more patriotic than Rosie the Riveter? Rosie the Riveter. Where's her name from? Well, first of all, it's alliterative, Rosie the Riveter, but you also have proof from Willow Run, from our archives, that there was a woman named Rose Monroe, and she was on the line. And she was a riveter on the line. And Walter Pidgeon came through from Hollywood with his whole production crew, his movie crew, to make a war bond video. And he happened to see her. He stopped and he said, hello, what's your name? Rose. And he said, well, hi, Rosie. Here's a Rosie the Riveter. So we have that put together. We have Rose Monroe. We have alliteration. We've got women all over the country saying that they were the famous pose. Well, we don't know. Some were and some weren't. But to be a riveter, you did not have to be wearing a polka-dotted headband and be making and doing rivets. It's an umbrella term. Just like G.I. Joe is the umbrella term for any random soldier, Rosie the Riveter is the umbrella term for any woman who worked at any job, in any city, in any factory, for any amount of time during World War II. Think about it. Any woman who worked in any factory, in any city, at any job for any amount of time is a Rosie the Riveter. And we have probably 100,000 of these women who don't know that they are Rosies because they just made propellers or they made windshield wipers or they stenciled the airplanes. They said, I wasn't a riveter. We are trying to find these women. That's part of why I'm doing what I do. Your aunts, your grandmothers, your mother, the old lady down the street maybe was walking to Briggs and she just didn't talk about it after the war. We want that story, or we want to honor her. So this is Rosie the Riveter. We can do it. It doesn't have anything to do with the name Roosevelt. People want to know about that. But Roosevelt was called Rosie, but that was in the 1920s when he got his polio. And he built and paid for the Warm Springs, Georgia polio facility. And the little kids that were in Georgia in the water with him for therapy sessions called him Rosie because they were all learning how to try to walk again. But Rosie the Riveter has nothing to do with Roosevelt, but it is something. There she is. And it's all incredibly powerful. Now, we've got Norman Rockwell had the Saturday Evening Post in 1943, and he's showing a very confident Rosie. Look at her. She's got welding glasses. She's got a welding shield behind her head. She's holding probably a fried bologna sandwich. She's wearing an armband for all the machinery she has to deal with. She's got her ID badge right there, and that's got her face and her department on it. She's got an E for excellence right there, that long skinny thing. I have an E for excellence. That is just a pin to thank you for doing a good job or having filled your quota or doing whatever. There was no money that went along with an E for excellence. There was no pay, nothing but a public thank you for being part of the team. That started during the Revolutionary War, when George Washington wanted to thank his Continental soldiers who stuck with him through Valley Forge. He had no money. The Continental Congress had no money. They were promised land if we win this war. But he wanted to give them something else, so he gave them a Purple Heart, a little tin pin with a purple silhouette of George Washington on it. That was his thanks. Same thing with the Army E. The rest of those pins are just anything she wants to have on her suit. It didn't matter. She's got a lunchbox that says Rosie. She's got a giant riveting gun, which is much bigger than the normal, because a normal riveting gun is a pistol size. That's showing that she can rivet anything. She could even be out in the Kaiser shipyards doing the ships. She's wearing a big blue suit like me. She didn't need to. If she didn't have a messy job, she didn't need to wear this. But these were great if you had a messy job, and they got wonderfully deep pockets. And she got red socks because red is cool. She's wearing penny loafers because we didn't have steel-tip boots for women in the 40s. And so she could wear her penny loafers or her saddle shoes or anything, just as long as her toes were covered. This is her air gun. So there it is. And for the number of times you've maybe seen this poster, and I think everybody in the country has seen it, you maybe didn't notice she's got her feet on Mein Kampf. That's Hitler's book. And so she's making a military statement and she's making a cultural statement. You are going to be crushed. Look at that. And for years, people didn't realize that above her head, that was a shield for her welding. For years, people thought that in the blue flag field or the star field of the flag, that Rockwell had put an angel halo over her because she was an angel during the war. But anyway, there is Rosie, confident. And then 3 months later, he has another magazine cover. And this one is great. This one's called Rosie to the Rescue. And whereas Rosie in the factory, 6 million women who took these jobs, they really kind of scared all of them. They didn't know what they were going to do. This is to celebrate the 16 million women who did not go into the factories, but who took jobs in their communities to let the men go to the service and their communities wouldn't die during the war. So think about it. There are 31 different occupations he's showing here. First of all, you notice that she's wearing Uncle Sam's suit from the famous poster in World War I want you. So you know that she's talking to you. All right, then up at the top, if we work our way down, she's wearing a nurse's cap. She's no longer a community nurse, but she's also a military nurse. Under that, she's wearing a black cap. And that means she's a train engineer or she's driving the bus. Behind her ear, she's got a pencil. She's no longer the secretary to the bank president. She's the bank president and the bank bookkeeper. She's wearing headset behind a telephone operator headset. And you know that the original telephone operators were men until the phone companies realized that the men were answering the phone. What do you want? Call tomorrow. Hello, may I help you? Who would you order? Who would you hire? So Rosie is wearing her headset. Over her shoulders, she's got a big mop because she's cleaning. Around her shoulders, here, she's got electrical coils because she's an electrician. She's got an oil can. She's a mechanic. She's carrying her own typewriter from spot to spot. She's got a time clock because she's trying to help you do whatever job you're doing more efficiently and in better timing. Because guess what everybody's enemy is? Time. So you've got to do it faster, but you got to do it better. She's got keys around her arm, her wrist, because she's running a boarding house for all these workers that are working in all these factories. And the factories hadn't built housing for any of these people. So she's having them at home. She's got one of these little thingies, the nickel, dime, quarter thing, a change maker for the bus drivers. She's got scissors shoved in her pants because she has to mend clothes at home because no company in this country is making clothes for her family. They have to make do until the war is over. She's got, let me see, what else do we have? She's got lanterns because she's standing on the tracks at night with a red lantern or a green lantern, telling those trains that are carrying chemicals to go all over this country which track is open. We didn't have computers to do that. Somebody had to be out there to tell the train which was the clear thing. That's Rosie. She's still cleaning. She's still teaching. She is a truck farmer. She's not only up here, you can see she's got her own farming implements for her own garden, but here she's a truck farmer. She's going out to the farms to bring in produce so that all the people in town who no longer have cars, because we've got gas rationing, we've got tire rationing, we've got no cars being built, so that they can walk to the local market. Somebody had to bring that food in, Rosie. And look, she's running because Rosie doesn't have time to take her time. And on the way home, she delivers milk. Are you kidding? When we talk about World War II, we have to talk about the fact that the American woman bucked up. 6 million went into the factories of all ages. 16 million kept their communities alive so that the men could do it. Women were part of the team during this, and it changes the whole mentality of women during the war, and it changes the labor looks of this country. Now, here's a picture of riveting. We've got the rib, the rib, the skin, the rib, the skin, the rib, the skin, the rib, the skin, the rib. That's the way the airplanes are on the inside. We've got two people. They're a team. This woman is riveting. She's got her hair covered because you don't want your hair pulled out by an air hose. And she's putting a rivet through holes that had already been done in another department. She is her team member, a bucker. She's holding a bucking bar because if you've got your airplane like this, you're putting a rivet through, somebody has to buck on this end to push real hard to bulge it so that it never comes out the hole. You don't want to put an airplane together with nuts and bolts and washers and screws and things that could shake and loosen. Once you put a rivet in and you buck it, it never comes out. It was harder to do the bucking than the riveting because you had to use your real force for that. But these two would change all day because these were heavy guns. And so you're switching things over. Please note that she's a black woman. During this war, the black women and the black activists in this country went to Roosevelt and they threatened him with a national strike of all the support workers in this country. And they said it's because we want a piece of the pie. We want defense jobs. These are good paying, wonderful jobs. I have a son who's wearing a Tuskegee Airman suit. I have a son who's in the Army. He's in a segregated unit, but he is proud to be part of the American Army. I don't have the time, the money, or the patience to go around this country and be at the end of the line and hope that some random hiring agent gives me a job. I am an American woman. I want to work for the American cause. And he said, I don't have time for a strike. And they said, you're right, you don't. Sign the bill. He signed Executive Order 8802, the first Equal Employment Act in this country. Equal pay for equal work. Black and white workers, men and women. The first one ever. Roosevelt did it with his arms behind him. He didn't want to, but he had to. And it changed the labor market because black families are also going to be able to get in line and not unfairly have to always be at the end. Remember the 40s, this was the height of segregation. And it's just wonderful that that thing was done. Dr. Seuss, we always think of him as a children's author. He was one of our best propagandists during the war. He wrote so many books and cartoons and drawings for newspapers to convince everybody in this country to buy war bonds and to be part of the team. One of my favorites is Dr. Seuss has a guy who is playing a church organ, and he's wearing his tuxedo, and his tail is flying. He's got sweat coming off his head, and he's going like this, and he turns to this congregation, and he says, you can't play the best music in the world if you don't use the black and the white keys. Everybody was on board with this because we needed the workers. Now, Women were doing everything. Yes, men were in the factories. I'm not suggesting it's only women. Here's a woman who is doing it. She got the old riveting gun. She's going through the holes that are already been planted or already been punched. Underneath her, right here, would be her bucker. So she's going like this. They don't see each other. They had to come up with a system or a rhythm or a counting or a song because they had to go. But that's what they did. Women did everything you could imagine, every job. And you'll notice that many of these are not wearing the suits that I'm wearing because they weren't doing anything messy. They're just wiring or something. She's got a white blouse on and she's got an apron. It doesn't matter. But do anything. Women could do it. They were trained and they had great confidence in what they did. It also built great camaraderie between the women in their communities. Willow Run has a bus that goes around to all these communities because people didn't have cars. And so we're going to have that going. Plus, we have to pick people up sometimes 2-3 hours away because when they built Willow Run, nobody thought about housing. We were used to the idea that if you build a factory, the people in town take those jobs and they go home to their own beds at night. Now we are having thousands of people from around the country coming here expecting to not only get a good job and good money, they're expecting a better life. They thought Henry Ford would take care of them. Well, no, you're going to have every apartment house, boarding house, and all these surrounding areas filled up. And people living in cars and lean-tos and trunks of this and that. Hundreds were going home every week saying this isn't going to work. That's when we started building Willow Village, Willow Run, Norwayne, all this housing for all of these workers that we have to. Harry Truman came as head of the housing association or housing department in this country. He was vice president, or he wasn't vice president yet. He was the senator from Missouri. And he looked at this, he said, shameful. You can't have these people not having housing. We had to start it. But we also have them on a bus. We are going to hire 400 little people from Hollywood. These were the little people from The Wizard of Oz who were now out of work because 1939 was the Wizard of Oz movie. Now Hollywood is making nothing but war movies. And that means those war movies are being sent around the globe to our soldiers. But the little people were full-grown, strong men, and they wanted to help. They were little enough to get into the wings and be on their back to be the bucker, so that the Riviter was on top going like this. They were on their back in that little tiny wing and then pulled out when they had finished it. Unbelievable. Kansas City hired very thin blind women who were able to be inside the wings. These were women who were not claustrophobic, who didn't need a flashlight. They could get into those wings, and they were not buckers. Their fingertips were so sensitive that they wired the wings. Anybody that wanted a job in World War II could get it. And even if you couldn't do anything else but sit on a stool and look through a pike all day long, you could look through that pike and see if there were spider webs, because if spider webs were in there, that's spider eggs. Spider eggs mean spiders. We're not going to use that pipe for the engine of an airplane or for the engine of a tank. Anybody that wanted a job could get it. And this, because of Executive Order 8802, it was open to everybody for equal pay. Ford paid in cash because no bank in the surrounding area had enough cash on hand. Your carpool was not going to stand there and wait for you to get to the end of the line. Your bus was not going to wait for you to stand in line to get to the bank. So Ford had to pay in cash. I use this to show that women in this country were pilots. They were not military pilots, but they were our ferrying pilots. This is a famous picture of the pistol-packing mamas. These were the WASPs, women's air support pilots. And they did the ferrying of airplanes. They did the testing. They pulled the targets for practice. They had very dangerous jobs, but they were doing all kinds of things. And the reason I show this is when I talk to the high schools and I tell these young girls, your life is wide open. You've got a vision that you can do anything in this world that you want because of the women in World War II, whether they were in the factory, whether they were in the community, or whether they were on the tarmacs. You can do anything you want. And we have our woman for the B-25 is a woman. I think she's the only person in the country, the only woman in the country certified to fly a warbird. But she is our pilot. This is our B-25. The B-25 is named for Billy Mitchell, and it is the only airplane in our arsenal named for a person. Everything else we have is named for a thing or an idea. Think about it. Freedom, Unity, Apollo, Mercury, Saturn, Columbia, Challenger, Rover, Voyager. The only one that's named for a person is Mitchell, because that's how important he was. He was the one in 26 who said the airplane is the future. We bought this. We got it for our museum. We got it as a trainer plane. We had to get all of its blueprints because it was made in Kansas City, find out what the original colors were. And we brought it back. Kalita Air did the painting of it. They did a wonderful job. But anyway, all of this, you can buy tickets to fly in this. But this came and it had no nose art. And we decided at that point that when we were going to paint this thing, we were not going to have a bikini-clad pinup girl on our warbird. And so our nose art is Rosie. And it is Rosie's Reply is the name of our flying airship. She's looking in the eyeball. She's got her riveting done. And she celebrates the American woman, those in the factory and those in the community. Rosie's reply to what was going on was that she would get involved. Now, we've got the best child care in the country during this time period. The government had to give you no reason not to come to work. And we all know that women are wonderful workers. But if they had no child care, things fall apart. And we know that from during COVID when the public schools closed. And thousands of women were laid off or fired or had to quit because they had no child care. In the 40s, we had no such word as childcare or daycare, that it wasn't part of our vocabulary. If I wanted to go to the dentist, I could leave my children for an hour with my aunt, my sister, or my mother who lived next door or upstairs with grandma. I never had childcare problems, but now we are asking women to do 6 days a week, 9 hours a day, sometimes 2 to 3 hours from where they are living on that bus trip. And what are they going to do? They have to have child care assistance. The government passed the Lanham Act, the first time ever. Federal money going to communities to set up daycare centers. You didn't have to use it. You didn't have to send your kids to it, but it was there for you if you needed it. And that didn't have to be a whole school. It was your garage. It was the backyard or the back room of your school. It was your empty church room. It didn't matter. There was going to be a place where the children were safe, run by professional teachers who were being paid while you worked. We are also going to tell them, we've got these clinics. We've got daycare centers at these big factories. Bring your kids to work with you, especially if they're sick. There's a clinic with a nurse in it. We'll give you flex time. We'll let you get off the riveting line to go kiss your kids, give them a kiss, read a story, and then you can go back to work. They'll feel better. You'll feel better. And we only lost 1 hour of your day, not a whole day. We will let you, we have no car seats. You could put 15 kids in the carpool. We have no car seat and seat belts. You could put 75 kids in that bus. Bring them to work. And we will allow you to work while you don't have to worry about your kids as much. Kaiser Shipyards out in the Northwest sent their women home with a hot casserole when they were done their shift. Can you imagine that? Think of the number of women or the number of workers involved with all that cooking and preparing and wrapping it up and stuff. This was a boom for workers during World War II. So child care at that point. And here it is. This is the end of the line. These are the garage doors, which are going to allow the B-24 to come out. Remember, the B-24 has a wingspan of 110 feet. The garages are bigger. They're 144 feet because General Hack Arnold said, in case the war goes longer and we have to make bigger airplanes, we won't have time to muck around with garage door dimensions. So they're bigger than what we need. And this is showing the B-24 coming out of those garage doors. It's unbelievable. When you think about the miracle of all of this, in 1938, when Consolidated started making the B-24, it was 1 month, 1 plane. 1 month, 1 plane. This picture, 1944, June of 44, which is the same date of when we are landing on the beaches of Normandy, because you have to remember, all of this takes time. All of this took time. Declaring war was December 41. This is June of 44. We're just getting to Europe. But anyway, here it is. These planes are coming off the runway one every 57 minutes. It still takes 3.5 weeks to a month to make a plane. But because the assembly line kept moving, a plane was produced every hour. Unbelievable. It's magical. It was miraculous. It was genius. And that's when we started to slow down the production, because we knew the war would at some point end. We're going to have too many airplanes. That's when Myrtle and Eloise and Georgia were pink-slipped and went back to Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And so there it is, how fast we are going to come off. It was wonderful. Here are the garage doors. They are still tested every year by the Kahn Associates. They go up in one big piece. They do not curl the way ours do. It takes about 2 minutes for each door to go up. Lights blink, the bells ring, and it's very exciting. On top of there, you can see the blackout curtain chain, because think about if Hitler had taken over England, he would have taken over all of Canada, because that's the British, or that's the United Kingdom. If Hitler controlled Canada, you know that he would have put an airport at Windsor, which is across the river from downtown Detroit. And that is only 25 miles away to the biggest bomber plant in the world. Think about how different the world would have been. Now, Hitler will kill himself in April of 45, and America will turn her guns and say the Pacific is going to end. We're going to end it. And that's one of these bad chapters of American history for this war. We never prioritized the South Pacific. We always said we're going to save Europe first. And that's why we let our soldiers in the South Pacific flounder. But anyway, when we turn those guns to finish it, we will by August of 45 with dropping of the bomb, and the war is over. And all of these men are going to come home after fighting this war, and they're coming home to an America that's very different, because that girlfriend has been making money, living with roommates, living in Omaha, Nebraska, and she might not even like him anymore. She might not even want to marry him or be his girlfriend. And so these men are coming back to girlfriends that are different, sisters, wives, mothers, grandmothers who have had a whole different experience. They're going to come back and they want their jobs right away. And a whole bunch of women say, I love being a crane operator. I love getting money in my pocket. I'm not coming home. I'm not giving you my job. Can you imagine the tension in our families and in our communities and in our factories when women say, nope, I'm keeping my job? Or if a black woman says to a white man, sorry, Charlie, this is my job. A lot of conflict. Many, many, many women wanted to go home. They were relieved to be able to go home and be the bosses of their own family. Many women did not want to go home. They wanted to keep these jobs in independence. Others went into the service branches or the auxiliaries, because now the military know that women could do anything. The government made it hard to stay in their jobs. They ripped up the Lanham Act. That was the end of child care. They will have workers' housing, no longer for workers. It is now being given to returning vets and their families. Men who come back and get those jobs are getting $2 an hour more than the women. So we're going to see a change in our salary line up. We're going to have all kinds of things going on. And those men who don't get jobs, they're going to say, what? I've been a soldier for 5 years and now I'm unemployed? What are you going to do for me? That's when they passed the GI Bill. And the GI Bill sends all of these soldiers, or many of these soldiers, to colleges, universities. They never thought they could afford, never thought they'd go. It gives them a whole new vision and a whole new outlook on life. It's going to make us have this construction boom, because we're going to have to build dormitories and college campuses and married housing and all of that. But the shameful part of the GI Bill is that it was for white soldiers only. And those black soldiers who had worn our uniform and had been proud and who were heroes and had sacrificed as much as the white soldiers came home to an America where they could not send their kids to the public school. They could not get a library card. They could not walk in the front door of the movie theaters. They could not get to college. They could not get insurance. They could not get housing or bank loans because they were not included in the government plan to thank their soldiers. It's a shameful chapter, and we have to read it. That helps us understand the American narrative that we have. We cannot avoid chapters like this. Now, I'm a tribute Rosie. As I said, I am not one of the originals who is now 98 to 105. All the other ages of those original Rosies have long died off. The very youngest, those that left high school at 17, they were 17 years old at Pearl Harbor, are 98 to 105. And my job as a tribute Rosie is to convince you that American history is interesting and you want to talk more about it. You want to read more. You want to come to our museum. You want to learn more about Rosie. I want to share Rosie's story because it's part of the American history. We have to know it. And so therefore, you need to come to our museum and learn. We have a wonderful exhibit. It's called Women Answer the Call. You can fly in our flyables. We have 3 Warbirds that you can fly in. You can fly in the B24 Mitchell. Buy a ticket. You can fly in the C-47 cargo parachute plane. You can fly in the Huey helicopter from Vietnam. Come, buy a ticket. Have a sense of why we are called the Michigan Flight Museum. We're not just the museum. You can fly from our place. And we are spreading the story, World War II. We have a Rosie the Riveter lunchbox drill team. We go to parades all over to chant and yell the story of Rosie and the story of Willow Run. V is for victory, but you know what? V is also velocity on the line, and V is for valor on the field. We are loud. We are fun. I think we make more noise we're louder than a marching band. We take originals on the flat trucks behind us so that the people on the parade route can yell and scream and thank them. We have families that are so proud of Grandma, who was a Rosie, that they dress up and they follow us along the way. We celebrated the 4th of July in Washington, D.C. We represented the state of Michigan by going down Constitution Avenue, chanting about Willow Run. And there's something to turning to a presidential box and saying, "See our planes flying by." I'll tell you, it's very exciting. So we've done Washington, D.C. We do the Thanksgiving Day parade in Detroit all the time. Last year, we were in Honolulu, Hawaii, and we marched in the Pearl Harbor parade. And I'll tell you, if there are 2 places you want to be, if you want to feel extra patriotic, 1, be on the beaches of Normandy on June 6th. 2, be in Honolulu on December 7th. It will change your soul to be in these places on those dates and to be part of those ceremonies. We hold the record for having the most women that look like me, dressed like Rosie. We started that in 2014, and we had a small gathering, and then the California women took it away from us. So we did it again in Hangar 1, you know, that long, skinny building I showed you where the pilots were all on cots waiting to test our airplanes. And we said, no one's going to ever take it from us. Look, we've got thousands of women. We're in a historic building. We have a real B-17 behind us. It is not a mural. It is not a picture. It's the real deal. California took it away from us again, but that's because they let their husbands be part of the record, wearing cut-off blue jeans and tennis headbands. And we said, what? We had been tested. We had been checked very carefully by Guinness, and we wrote a letter of complaint. We said, what? This isn't fair. That's not the spirit of this record. And they told us to get over it. So look, we did. And we have the Guinness record. We filled Eastern Michigan basketball arena with 3,375 Rosies. And California has surrendered. We sent them a couple dozen red roses, and we told them that if they ever try to take it from us again, we will fill the big house in Ann Arbor with Rosies, and all of you women are invited. So here we are. We've got the record. Now, they have just been given the Congressional Gold Medal, and that is the highest civilian award given by Congress. It is long overdue. They should not have had to wait until the year 2020 to have that bill passed, or to wait until 2023 to get it. But no matter what, we're so glad that they did. They are here it is, the women of the different kinds of women who would have been in our factories or in our communities running everything. The back of the medal shows Rosie with her wrench and her hair covered, and she is doing what she promised to do. She is going to help keep America safe by building the airplanes. She's going to keep America safe by building the ships. She's keeping America safe by building the tanks. And the whole time she's doing it, she's looking at a picture of her son or her brother or her boyfriend or her husband. Now, we took 11 of these original Rosies to Washington, D.C. for the honor flight. They don't see themselves as heroes, but we all know they are, because they stepped up and did what needed to be done during the war. They said, I just did it. Well, that's right. You just did it. You're a hero. The government considers them veterans of the home front. They are now recipients of the Congressional Gold Medal. There is no doubt that they're heroes. Now, we were flown into D.C. by Boeing, so we didn't have to go in on a commercial plane. Every place we went, we were met by flag-waving crowds and color guards and things. It was wonderful. We had a giant bus, which allowed us to have great parking in downtown Detroit or downtown Washington. And they all knew that whoever was on that bus was important and could go to the front of the line. Cherry blossoms popped out just for us. I know it. And then here they are, all 11 of them. They're in wheelchairs. They were all grumbling because most of them never use a wheelchair. They are so vigorous. And they said, you're making us look like old ladies. I don't want to be in a wheelchair. And we said, you know what? This is not under debate. This was an insurance issue. They don't want you to fall and break your hip today. You can break your hip tomorrow when you're home, not in D.C. today. So here they are, all of them. You can see their personalities. They've all got red socks and polka dots and sparkly hats. And then we went into Congress where we were wined and dined and did all kinds of things, including going to all of the monuments that honored strong women in our history. That's Rosa Parks, of course, from Detroit. And then I love this. This is my favorite statue in the whole Congress. And this is Lucretia Mott. She was our #1 abolitionist. That's what she did. She spent her life fighting slavery. And then my heroes, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who worked for 70 years to get American women the right to vote. They started out as abolitionists, and then they decided they needed to stop fighting for the black man. They needed to fight for the white woman, for themselves. And that's what changed them. And there was all that tension, and it's a whole story you want to know. That's another whole lecture I could give you. But anyway, you've got all of these 3 powerful women, and people will say, what is that? Why is there this hunk of marble sitting there? That's because this is a living monument, a living memorial. Some little girl in American history, in America today, is going to change our country so drastically and so incredibly that she will have her face carved here, and she will be looking over the shoulder of Susan B., who is looking over the shoulder of Lucretia Mott. It gives me chills to wonder who this little kid is, where she lives, and what is going through her mind. What can she do to make our country better? It's wonderful. Now, there we are down at the monument. This is the famous World War II fountain. This is the Lincoln Monument, which means Washington is straight across. Lincoln and Washington have to have no break in the sight line. It's a city law. They have to be able to blink at each other. And that means that the biggest memorial in the city, which is World War II, is sunk. You have to still let Lincoln and Washington see each other. So you go into World War II. And around the whole thing are all the pillars, and that stands for every state and every territory, because every state and territory was part of this world war. You've got stars right here. Every star represents 1,000 deaths. You've got the fountain, which keeps things moving, keeps life moving. We are going to be in a current. It never stops. You have to kind of get together. And here they are, all in their wheelchairs, all of them grumbling, but you'll notice they're all holding a banner. The banner that they're holding is what they looked like when they went into the factories in 41. Look at this. They are looking at a mirror of themselves. Most of them are so much older, but this is showing who they were, and it reminds them, and it reminds us of the courage of these women. They changed their lives. For us, they changed their lives for this country. We will have people talking to us the whole time we're there, especially women in the service. Little kids all over the country are reading books about Rosie. Everybody knows about Rosie now because we're doing a fairly good job of getting this story out. Little girls are dressing like me for Halloween. We know they are, so it's all out there. And then we've got this random kid who was there from Kansas City on a spring break while we were there. And he came up to us in the hallway and he said, I'm doing a social studies report on Rosie. Can I touch Rosie? And we said, yes. We all cry, of course. And he said he would put Carolyn's picture in his report because he was meeting an original Rosie in Washington, D.C. How cool is that? We then went around and looked around the whole wall of the World War II monument are the 3D dimensional pictures of every single campaign of the war. You don't even have to read anything. You just see the pictures and you know what it is. This is the big 3D thing of Rosie working on her riveting gun on a propeller. We, of course, left a beautiful red and white polka dot flower arrangement here to honor our Rosies. Women who stepped up were measured as citizens of the nation, not as women. This was a people's war, and everyone was in it. And my favorite quote of all is from Franklin Roosevelt. Think about this quote. They have given their sons to the military. They have stoked the furnaces and hurried the factory wheels. They have made the planes and welded the tanks, riveted the ships and rolled the shells. We went to King because King has changed this country. We went to Iwo Jima because that is the ultimate teamwork of our military. The cookies we were given didn't say we can do it. The cookies said we did it. We've got an honor board at our museum. If you know of a Rosie, deceased or not, send me the form. I will get her name engraved on a brass plaque so that you get Grandma's name into history. She needs to be remembered. It's easy to do. I'll send you a picture. This is Virginia showing you her name on there. And Virginia is our youngest original here because she cheated. She got in with her sister's paperwork. She's only 99. But anyway, there we go. Now here is a cartoon by, what is it? Snoopy or whatever, Peanuts. And so World War II came to an end. My grandmother left her job in the defense plant and went to work for the telephone company. We need to study the lives of great women like my grandmother. Talk to your own grandmother today. Ask her questions. You'll find she knows more than peanut butter cookies. And if there's one thing that all of these women, when we interview them about, their time on the line or whatever they did, they all feel still forgotten by our communities, by America in general. Think about it, if you ever go to a patriotic picnic or a band concert on the 4th of July or Memorial Day or Labor Day or Veterans Day or anything, the band always plays the Armed Forces medley. And all of a sudden, they're playing all the songs and they say, Army, stand up. Navy, stand up. Coast Guard, Air Force, Marines. They don't ask the Rosies to stand up. And there is a Rosie song. It was written in 1942 by Loeb and Evans. It's a wonderful song about being on the assembly line. If the band doesn't know that song, they should dedicate America the Beautiful to the Rosies. But the Rosies deserve to be part of it. So let me, and if you know a band director, tell them to start playing this extra song. Let me read this poem and end, please. They were the Rosies. They were the daughters, the mothers, the sisters, the wives, the girlfriends, and the grandmothers. They were the Rosies. They worked as riviters, buckers, sanders, welders, crane operators, bus drivers, uniform makers, bullet makers, parachute folders, clerical workers, shipyard workers, assembly line workers, support pilots, Red Cross volunteers, and so much more. They were the Rosies. They came from all over our country to be the backbone of Roosevelt's arsenal of democracy. They were the Rosies. They were teenagers, young adults, and senior citizens, and they came together with one purpose, to help win the war. They built 80,000 landing crafts, 100,000 tanks, 300,000 airplanes, 15 million guns, submarines, trucks, jeeps, and loaded uncountable rounds of ammunition. They were the Rosies. They were more than women working together. They had to raise their children alone and worry about their loved ones overseas. They were the Rosies. They helped fight the war. They helped win the war. And when we celebrate our veterans, particularly our disappearing World War II heroes, we have to celebrate and honor our disappearing World War II Rosies because they were a vital part of the team. Thank you, everybody, for being a good audience.